Hi beautiful angels, my name is Leah Fawn, aka Leah, and thank you so much for clicking on today's video. Women in whimsy.
And I'm British.
Today I'd love to talk about another one of my favorite games from childhood, Dark Cloud. This is another game where I've never heard anyone talk about it except for the people that are in my immediate circle. Firstly, Dark Cloud is a JRPG, aka a Japanese role-playing game that was developed by Level 5 and released on the PlayStation 2. It released in Japan first in the year 2000 and then later in 2001 in the US and Europe. Dark Cloud 2 was released the following year, but I haven't played that one, so I won't speak about it. The mechanics are pretty simple but fun and effective, I would say. There's a dungeon crawler and there's also elements of town building. And now I will get to the plot. So the world of Dark Cloud is called Terra. It starts with a warlord named Colonel Flag. He releases this evil creature through this summoning ritual called the Dark Genie, and his intention is to wipe out every town that opposes him from the area of Terra known as the West. The Fairy King Simba, I might be saying that wrong, intervened and sealed everyone in these things called Atla orbs, which protected them from the Dark Genie's power. Now, all of the playable characters, you can actually name them anything you want, but they do have default names, which is what I'll be referring to them as in this video. And I'll also be using the Japanese or East Asian pronunciation because the game is Japanese and I'm not sure if that's how they're meant to be said, but it's how I'm going to say them. The main protagonist is a young man named Toan. Toan starts in his home village, which is known as Norune. It could also be Norune, but I'm gonna say Norune, and I'm sorry if that drives you crazy. He starts out and he's with his mom when this villager named Paige comes in, and she is his childhood friend, and she's trying to get him to come to this festival that she helped organize. He goes with her and they're having fun, but then it ends with an attack from the Dark Genie. Paige is almost crushed by a windmill until Toan lunges in to rescue her. Then it fades to black and we don't get to know what happens yet. And I don't know what it is with my favorite RPGs starting with some like bad things happening at a festival. I'm saying that, but there's literally two. It's this one and the Dog Island, which are very different games. But anyway, moving on.
Wow! If I had a nickel for every time I was doomed by a puppet, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
So after it comes back, Toan is met by Simba the Fairy King, and he gives him this artifact called the Atlamilia. It's like a bracelet type of accessory, and when he holds it up, he can absorb the outlet orbs and release whatever's inside of them. So now his job is to search all of these dungeons in the west that contain these outlet orbs and just recover all of the people, objects, and places that were sealed within them to restore everything. The first dungeon of this game is called the Divine Beast Cave, and it has 15 floors. During the crawl of the Divine Beast Cave, he meets a man named Seda who challenges him to a sword fight. And in the middle of it, there's a cat, so Toan loses to save the cat instead. And to reward him for this, Seda gives him a changing potion. Later on, after you've already been restoring Norune, the cat comes back and he uses the changing potion on it and then it becomes a cat girl. This is Xiao. She's a cat, half human, and she's probably my cat girl awakening, so to speak. She was always my favorite to play with, and her abilities are that you can jump over larger gaps with her in the dungeons, and she has ranged attacks using different slingshots. She gets this slingshot at some points in the game named Steve, who actually talks, and I think he's very funny. At the end of the Divine Beast Cave, they meet Dran, who is this dog dragon thingy who reminds me of that one character from the Neverending Story. I'll put a picture of both of them right next to me, but I don't remember his name, I'm sorry. Now, Dran is the guardian of the land, and he's usually very peaceful, but he's been possessed by the Dark Genie, and so Toan and Xiao must defeat him in battle. When they do, that releases the genie's hold and Dran is back to his normal self. Dran then directs them further on their quest to talk to Great Treant in Matataki Village to meet the Moon People. When they go to Matataki Village, they're greeted by this young boy named Goro who wants to fight them, and he does. After he loses, he scrambles up to this treehouse and he drops his earring, and upon equipping this earring, suddenly you can understand the different forest creatures, including the Great Treant, who they came to speak to. At some point, Goro does join the party as well, and his ability is that he's just strong and he can use blunt objects to do melee attacks like Toan can, and he has things like axes and oversized hammers and clubs, but my favorite weapon he has is literally just a frozen tuna, and it's what it sounds like. He just has this big frozen fish that he hits things with. They speak to the treant and he tells them where they can find the moon people. They have to venture through the next dungeon, which is the Wise Owl Forest, and this is my favorite in the game, and the music is so nice in this one. There are 17 territories in the Wise Owl Forest, and at the end they have to fight the boss, who is Master Utan, and he is this large primate. And Master Utan is the guardian of the forest and is very similar to Dran in that he got possessed, and that when they beat him, the possession wears off. They keep going and make their way to Brown Boo, which is one of the places where the moon people live. The moon people haven't heard of the Dark Genie, and they just think that the party is trespassing, and so they capture them, but upon hearing their story, they release them. They devise a plan to find the moon orb and summon this thing called the moon ship. They go next to a place that is like this beach town named Queens, and they find that it has also been affected by the attack. There's actually only one guy left, who is the shopkeeper. The moon people think that the moon orb might be within the shipwreck, and so that is the next dungeon. It functions the same as the Divine Beast Cave in Wise Owl Forest so far, and there are 18 layers in it. As they explore it, like with the others, they release more of the Atla orbs and recover more of the city. They find a lamp, and there's a friendly genie in it, and her name is Ruby, and she ends up joining as well. And her ability is that she shoots magic from these rings. At the end of the shipwreck dungeon, they meet Lasaya, and Lasaya is the former queen who drowned herself after she was stood up at the altar. After defeating her, her fiancé comes in, and it turns out it's the shopkeeper that was already in the village. He comes in and explains that he was under the influence of a thing called the Life Orb, which granted him immortality at the cost of whatever he cherished most in life, and it knocked him out before he was able to go exchange his vows. He gives Toan the moon orb and destroys the life orb, going with Lasaya. Even with the moon orb, they're unable to summon the moon ship, however. The moon people send Toan and the others to a desert. That's when they go to this village called Muskalaka, and this is where they find the Sun and Moon Temple, the next dungeon. Like the shipwreck, there are 18 levels in this one as well. The next person who joins the party is Ungaga, who is a desert warrior. He also fights melee style and uses spears and polearms to fight. At the end of this dungeon, they must defeat the King's Curse, and then finally the moonship can be activated. They go to a moon city called Yellow Drops. Now this is where they meet Osmond, who is the leader of the moon people, and he's this rabbit guy with like a propeller on his head. I'll put pictures of all these characters. He needs them to help collect pieces of this mech known as the Sun Giant, and he thinks that that will be what helps them to defeat the Dark Genie. Osmond also joins your party, and he has pretty cool abilities. He can use a jetpack, and so he can get over bigger gaps than Xiao can. And he uses ranged weapons as well, like guns and cannons, so he has pretty good attacks. The next dungeon is the Moon Sea, where they look for these pieces, and there are 15 craters in this dungeon. At the end, there's a coliseum where they must fight Minotaur Joe. After this, the Sun Giant can be completed, so they pilot it over to the Dark Heaven Castle to fight the Dark Genie. They arrive and they confront what they think is the Dark Genie at long last. But after they beat him, it's actually revealed that they were only fighting a rat from the castle that absorbed a fraction of its power. The real Dark Genie then possesses Colonel Flag from the beginning, but his body cannot withstand that much power, and so he dies. The genie now does not have a host. Toan must chase it as it goes throughout the castle, and then Toan meets Seda again, who explains that all of this is actually his fault somehow. Apparently he took a dark power into his body to defeat invaders, and that led to the birth of the Dark Genie. Seda then opens a portal to the Gallery of Time, which is the last dungeon. When the genie reappears, it wants to reunite with Seda's body, but Seda kills himself so that it cannot. When they travel through the Gallery of Time, Seda's memories are infused within it so that they collect pieces of the story. The floors go back in time to up to 400 years, where their goal is to stop the birth of the Dark Genie to begin with. Upon gathering the full story, they realized that the reason Seda accepted this is because his fiancée had died at the hands of assassins that had been looking for Seda himself. Tuan cannot stop the Dark Genie's genesis, and so they must fight him in his real form right there. After this, they return to their own time, and they use the Alamilia to revive Sophia, who is Seda's fiancée. The Fairy King tells them that the Dark Genie has been defeated for now, and that is the plot of Dark Cloud. Now, there are certain side quests as you collect the Atla, which is the town building aspect of the game, and you can restore all sorts of things. You can place the buildings, and then the residents will have certain items that they want in certain places, and then things inside the house, and then you also place the residents themselves and then can talk to them. One of the villagers that I remember the most is Couscous, who is this large, like, marshmallowy looking guy, and he really likes candy. You can also do things like fishing, photography, and I think inventing, but honestly I didn't really get to the end of the game much as a kid, so I might be misremembering that. The other thing I remember is just the appearance of the inventory slots, which sounds a little strange, but I really liked them because it looked like those jewelry boxes with like the crushed velvet in it, and it just looked pleasing to me. Also, the water looked so good in that game. There are different items too, like they're usually powders, and there's things like repair powder, which repairs weapons because weapons can break in the game, and there's also revival powder, which can, revive. There's also attachments which give weapons certain attributes that can help in different areas, like I think there's a fire one or an ice one for different things, and that just makes them more effective in combat. Again, with this game, much like the Dog Island, I think the soundtrack is very good, and again, unlike the Dog Island, you can find it on Spotify. This soundtrack was composed by Tomohito Nishiura. My favorite track, again, is the Wise Owl Forest, but I also like the Daily Life. Overall, online, I've noticed that the consensus about Dark Cloud seems kind of mixed. Some people think that it is janky, and I think it probably is because it's a PlayStation 2 game from 2000. But I think there is a lot of nostalgia bias for people who did play it as well. And honestly, if you're a person who does play a lot of JRPGs, I don't know if you're necessarily missing anything if you don't play this one. If you have no connection or memory with it, it's probably not like top tier. But I like it. Nostalgia definitely clouds my judgment a little, pun intended. Now, as I mentioned before, Xiao is my favorite character, and that leads me to the outro. This cat girl was sort of my first time seeing a Neko Mimi or cat girl character in media because I didn't really watch anime as a kid. I just love the concept. And now, perfect segue, my next video will actually be about my cat ears, like what it means to me, why I wear them, and other things like that. Now, thank you so much if you made it this far. I do apologize that this is a shorter video because I didn't have as much to say about Dark Cloud as I do about Super Paper Mario or the Dog Island, because I did play it less than I played those two, and a lot of the times, admittedly, I was much younger, and I would just like to watch my parents play it, especially in the dungeons, because I actually hated any combat in games as a kid. I liked the story of it instead. I do probably remember the least from this one because of all that, and I might make an addendum to this video later on if I feel like it. Please leave a comment if you played the game or want to add anything, and especially if you have any specific favorite parts about it. Again, thank you all so much for watching. Please take care of yourself and have a good day or night wherever you are. Bye!